Imagine Secretary of War Hegseth visiting the troops or going to Iran specifically during this conflict. That says a couple of things. We're doing so freaking good in this Iran thing that we've taken over significant portions and we're able to just go there, whether it's an island that we've confiscated or diplomacy purposes, or we've completely just destroyed their infrastructure and they gave up and now we're visiting. I think the likelihood of that happening is probably near zero. But the Secretary of War popping into the Middle East other than Iran itself, if that happens, I think that says that this conflict is expected to take longer than just a couple of weeks. We're entering the third week of this Iran conflict thing. Are we calling it a war? Are we calling it a conflict? Are we just calling it an operation? I don't know. But I am seeing some things that I find to be just so worrying when it comes to some of our leadership and how I think it's going to affect us. Imagine being so weak in the mind, so insecure with yourself, so just think you're right about everything, that you turn into Senator Lindsey Graham. Some people call him Grinder Graham. I'll let you call him whatever you want, but I saw him put a message on X that led me to believe that he's alluding to a couple of things, which I think is pretty shameful. Number one, he's talking about we should take Carg Island and we should be taking their infrastructure and we should be doing this and we should be doing that. That really says to me is that he's still his old hawkish way, his old neocon way, his non-America first way. He doesn't care how much money we spend overseas. He doesn't care if you don't have time to prep your families for stuff. He doesn't care if your sons and daughters are going to war. He doesn't have any sons and daughters. He doesn't care. But at the very end of his message, he put the word Semper Fi. Now, I know what Semper Fi means, always faithful, Semper Fidelis. So happens to be I was an active duty Marine, and he was not. Nothing wrong with non-Marines using Semper Fi because they're usually paying homage to we when they do stuff like that. But for him to use that at the end of that hawkish ass statement leads me to believe he's either about to push the president to do something else or he already knows something that we don't know. Nancy Mace, Congresswoman, I think she's also from South Carolina or one of the Carolinas. Nonetheless, she also seemed to be making this ominous statement about the U.S. Marines and their deployment, and it's too soon to talk about what's about to happen next. And listen, sending the Marines into this theater area says a couple of things to me. Number one, we're about to start confiscating and maybe going after Iranian oil ships that leave that region. Maybe we catch them in the Gulf of Oman or whatever. And number two, this is going on longer than we expected. None of these things signal to me we're about to take Carg Island. Not with the Marines. Me used to be an active duty Marine. The taking of Carg Island with a forecasted deployment of 2,500 Marines is not the look. I definitely see that happening with some type of special operators first. And then maybe the Army securing it after that, or maybe Marines after. It doesn't add up for me. I could see Delta Force or Green Berets, hell, the 82nd Airborne, before I can see first getting the Marines through the Strait of Hormuz and worrying about the defenses and the weaponry that Iran has off their coastline. That very, very narrow turn that we'd have to make in order to get into the Persian Gulf, or we fly them in, right, over one of our neighboring countries, and maybe we can drive our vessel. It just sounds very, very complicated. Could we get in through Saudi Arabia? I guess. But do you know the difference between taking an island and holding an island? It's a big difference. For us to take Carg Island was probably doable, but for us to hold Carg Island, I don't see it happening. Let me tell you something. We seem to be making the threat to Iran that if you don't open the Strait of Hormuz, we're going to go after your oil infrastructure. So let's just say, for instance, they open it, which seems to be their biggest piece of leverage, if not their only piece of leverage that they have. We could then say, if you don't hold democratic elections, we're going to destroy your oil infrastructure. Or we could say, if you don't give us your nuclear weapons, we're going to destroy your uranium, rather, your enriched uranium. We're going to destroy your oil infrastructure. You see how this could never end for the leadership of Iran? You see why we, in my opinion, shouldn't be there in the first place? You see why when a caged, cornered dog only has the reaction to fight, or in this case, bite? It does not matter what type of threats you make to their dog food off in the corner. They'll be like, man, fuck that food, okay? I didn't like wet dog food, no way, okay? I have a way through the Gulf, through going directly on the other side of my country where I can just get dry dog food. We'll be all right. We'll be good. And what does it say if we take Karg Island? What we're saying is 90% of Iran's oil processes through that island, and then it ships off and goes through the Strait. The simple solution for Iran, which they're probably planning for, is to stop sending 90% of their oil through that island. That doesn't mean they still can't get oil to other countries. That just means that the containers and the shipping process is going to be different. But they still might be getting their bread, baby. This ends one of two ways. I'm telling you, taking Karg Island is not one of those ways. Now, way number one is a ground invasion, which leads to regime change, the taking of their enriched uranium, and nation building. Way number two is diplomacy. Stop the escalation trap. And at this point, I don't want us in there. I wish we weren't in it. But now that we are in it, I'm rooting for the home team, and I'm rooting for way number two. Diplomacy could happen right now. There is no requirement that we continue with the bombardment, because we're showing so many signs to the Iranians that our plans have been completely changed by way of the war and how it's going, and that we're showing slight signs of weakness. Here's another example. Earlier today, the president reached out on Truth Social to European partners, saying that he urging them to send warships to the Strait in an effort to help to open it, which is in essence saying that it's closed. When earlier this week, we were saying that it wasn't closed. That's saying two things. Iran hears, hell yeah, we closed that shit, bro. And they also hear that Navy ships alone can't reopen that shit. That's what they hear. So if you are the pin dog called the Iranian regime and you want to stay in power, why would you open the Strait of Hormuz? You would much rather your people eat white rice, drink water from your lakes, of which they have a lot in Iran, and their desalinization processes and their food storages, which they have, than to give up your leverage. We're entering the third week. Israel seems like they now have to go into Lebanon with the ground force for the Houthis. Karg Island seems to be a target which Iran cares about, but not enough to give up them freaking panties. And I just paid 30% more to fill up my truck than I did a week and a half ago. Yay me. Not only on top of that, I buried the lead. We just lost 6 service members. I think they're Air Force, but that KC-135, which I'm still waiting for the investigation to come back on, which apparently had an in-air collision in Western Iraq. And in Iraq, we just told every single U.S. citizen, if you're non-essential, to get the F out the country. I didn't know we were back at war in Iraq, bro. Imagine this. Imagine the rule-based international order ending with this decision that we made. No more countries being able to just traverse the world seas without worrying about a random pirate here or there. Yeah, they had to worry about a Houthi there and pirates off the coast of Somalia and Yemen. And yeah, they did have to worry about that. But the rules-based international order made it so that people can fly a flag and sail the open seas. The rules-based international order made it so that when Russia invaded Ukraine, Iran had no although they were allied with Russia, they felt no need to attack Ukraine from the southwest. But now they just made a threat today that they see viable targets in Ukraine if Ukraine helps the United States. Do you not see the makings of WW3 if we continue down this path? Because I do. How about you? I've seen people in my comments in recent days saying, well, what were we supposed to do, X? Were we supposed to continue to let them just build up their uranium and eventually attack us? And the answer is no, we weren't. But we already have examples where they're willing to spread their butt cheeks if we're willing to give them lube first. No, that's a very vulgar way to think of it. I also was used to be an active duty Marine, meaning there was a nuclear agreement during the Obama years. We eased sanctions. We released some of their money that was tied up in different world banks, and they slowed down the enrichment of uranium. Who knows what could have happened? Wait, the Ayatollah dies, give up some more sanctions. We get inspectors in there to slow down their enrichment. There's a lot of things that could have happened, but this feels like a war of opportunity than a war of necessity. And this war of opportunity may cost us more bread. More importantly, it may cost us more blood. Whether that's blood of my brethren that are over there serving, or hear people now that are sympathizing or grievance with stuff that's going on. The Old Dominion shooter, apparently his family was in Lebanon and in the strikes that were conducted by our greatest ally. The other three seem to be false flaggy, but they still seem to be sympathizers with the Islamic State. And the taking out of the Ayatollah is closer in the eyes of this specific subset of Muslims as if you took out their version of the Pope. That's why we see so much unrest in so many different countries. UAE's not disclosing the amount of type of damage they're getting. They're arresting their citizens if they post online the type of damage that's happening. Our embassy in Iraq was just struck earlier today. And now 15 countries are involved in this shit. 15. Last June, when it was Operation Midnight Hammer, before we jumped in, it was 1v1. I mean, that sounded like a, you know what I'm talking about? I done stood around when my homeboy was getting his ass beat, and I still didn't jump in. I mean, we talked shit on the way home, but he took that ass whooping. Sometimes you gotta let people take that ass whooping, or see if they're lying about that ass whooping. Maybe they really weren't about to get that ass whooped. I don't know. What do you think? First time stopping by, hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you part of the battalion. If this is not your first time stopping by, well, let me know what you think about just everything that happened over the last literally 24 hours. For everyone else, we'll speak soon.